Welcome, everyone. If you're far back, you may want to move down. It's up to you, but if you can't hear me, then you might want to come closer. I don't bite, so you can come as close as you want. I'm not really going to talk a lot about the brain. I mostly want to concentrate tonight on uses of the words soul, mind, consciousness, those kinds of mysterious things. And I'm not going to pretend to be representing philosophy as a whole or any. Philosophy has so many different viewpoints within it, all kinds of different philosophers that are in philosophy. So this is really just my take, and maybe a few other philosophers share this with me. So I'm just going to do some investigating of these expressions and give you first a little bit of a history of how modern philosophy has kind of gotten to where it is, and give you an idea of that, and then we'll jump into what might be wrong with what kind of mistakes or confusions are involved in the way present day philosophy of mind is being taught and practiced and thought about. So the other thing is I don't really want to do a lot of lecturing. This is not really a paper that I'm presenting. I want it to be more like a classroom. So what that means is after I give this little introductory stuff, I'm going to expect you to participate by thinking about things with me. And I have a blackboard here, and it's pretty big, so we can fill it up with a lot of stuff. All right, so the questions we're dealing with are, what is the soul? What is the mind? What is consciousness? Now, first of all, I want to point out something kind of unusual about these questions. If you came across a word that you never heard before, it might make sense to ask, well, what is that? Right? Syzygy. Anybody know what a syzygy is? See, you've never heard of it. So you might come across that word and say, what's a syzygy? Anybody know? Chief? You've forgotten. I like that word just because of how it's spelled and how you say it. Syzygy. It's a term in astronomy, and it's talking about the alignment of stars. So a syzygy is a certain arrangement of stars that kind of move around each other. All right, that's a basic thing. But the idea is if you run across a word that you don't know, you've never heard, it makes sense to ask, what is that? Right? What about these words? Are they unfamiliar to you? Do you use them nearly every day? So this really shouldn't be a puzzle at all, should it? And when you use them, do other people generally stop you and say, what do you mean by that? Answer? No. No. Right? So why do we have these questions? How do they come up? How did they become questions? Now, it's interesting, in philosophy, you got lots of other questions that are similar to this. Now, I'm not going to talk about them, but I just want to mention them. One thing you think about is the Areas of philosophy are kind of divided up according to these questions. You've got epistemology, which tries to answer the question, what is knowledge? What is reality? There you're in metaphysics. What is good and evil? Ethics. What is beauty? Aesthetics. So there's kind of this correlation of areas in philosophy with these questions. And so consequently, you also have these three questions kind of going into the area we call philosophy of mind. All right. Other ones I could mention, you know, what is science? So you have philosophy of science and so on. Well, the odd thing about all these is the same, right? These are words we use all the time. There shouldn't be a puzzle. So why is there? Let me illustrate with a famous one. Ask you, anybody want to volunteer an answer? Space. What is time? Nobody wants to try it? What is time?
Our perspective of where we are.
Our perspective of, what did you say?
Where we are, like in terms of years.
Oh. So time is our perspective of where we are in time. Is that going to work? You can't answer the question, what is time, by using the word time, can you? Any other attempts? Okay, by the way, there's no shame in whatever answer you give, okay? Because one of the most famous philosophers of all had trouble with this one, St. Augustine. Anybody?
Well, what occurs from one period to another?
One period.
One period to another.
One period of what?
Reality. Life.
One period of life? I thought you would say one period of time.
A form of measurement.
A form of measurement. That's getting better. A dimension? Time is a dimension? Does that work? The fourth dimension? Okay. Well, if this question puzzles you, why does it puzzle you? After all, you use the word all the time. Right? You got here on time, most of you. Right? You look, you can look right there. What is time? It's whatever's going through this clock. Why does this seem to be such a puzzle? Why is it such a problem? So I want to explore that a little bit. So if we ask this question, these questions, what is the soul? What is the mind? What is consciousness? One answer might be they're words. What is time? It's a word. Can't argue with that, can you? Time is a word. Okay, well, that doesn't get us anywhere. What we really want to ask is, what does this word mean? Right? What does the word mean? Well, the normal way of answering that question, what does this word mean, is by giving a definition. And generally, there's two kinds of ways you could give a definition. Roughly speaking, there are what we call ostensive definitions. This is when you point at something and you say the word, right? Monitor, chair, right? Desk, coat. It's like giving labels to something. That's what I mean by an ostensive definition. An ostensive definition is like giving the word as the label for something, as if the word stands for that. And it's very common, it's easy for us to suppose that the answer to the question, what does that word mean, is, well, whatever object it's the name of, right? Very easy to do that. It's very easy to slip into that. And so now it looks as if we have an answer then. So what is the meaning of the word time, or not time, of the word soul? Well, it's whatever that word is the label of, right? And what is that? Now we're stuck, right? Now we're stuck. Well, there are certain problems with this idea that the meaning of a word is the thing that it names. To give you just a hint about this, how many words are there in our English language that don't seem to be the name of anything? All kinds of them, right? We have what we call connectives, and, if, then, but, not. What are those words the name of? And then you have prepositions: with, above, below, beside. What are those words the name of? And you got modifiers: adjectives, adverbs, soft, hard, red, cyan, one of my favorite colors, good, bad, pleasant, painful, strenuously, easily, carefully. What are those words the labels of? What do they stand for? And even verbs, although it seems a little easier with verbs. Verbs, we might say, are the names of actions: running, walking, breathing, creating, killing, swimming, fighting, kissing, speaking, thinking, crying, laughing, listening. And then there's pronouns: it, I, he, she. What are those the names of? Now, you probably remember from grammar learning, pronouns stand for nouns, so you can substitute the noun. And nouns seem to be the easiest ones, right? A noun is, in fact, you probably were told this. Nouns do what? Go back to basic grammar. Nouns do what?
Describe a person, do something,
No, that describing is the adjective's job.
name things.
Naming, right? Nouns name things, persons, places, things, or ideas. There's a good one for you. What's an idea? What's that? Now, the problem with all these words is, can you point to something and say, that's the meaning of that word? What do you point to if you want to know the meaning of the word and? Or the meaning of the word softly? That's an adverb, right? Softly. What do you point to? Anybody got the idea? Want to try something?
Well, that should be demonstrated.
Okay, can maybe demonstrate it.
Contrast softly versus.
Okay. So I'm going to brush this desk softly.
Because that's comparative, so show the inverse of that.
While I'm brushing, where's the softliness?
Well, the lack of aggression, show the inverse of that, brush with vigor.
With vigor.
Yeah, so you might have to like,
How many of you saw the vigor? Did you see the vigor? You saw the brushing. Did you see the softness? See, we got, some problems here. Now, maybe they're not insurmountable, and a lot of philosophers have thought they're not insurmountable. You just have to kind of adjust it and say, an adverb is and an adjective, these are names of properties, qualities. And prepositions are the names of relations between objects or things, right? And like I said, the pronouns, these are just substitutes for nouns, so you should be able to do that. Although we have a problem with a sentence like this. What is it? When it's raining, what is it? Anybody? Does anything sound right to you? Could you put a noun in there that would sound right to you? It's raining. What? What's raining? The heavens? The heavens are raining? Try that next time you use this expression. Instead of saying it's raining, say, the heavens are raining. See if you'll be understood. Okay, so there's these problems, but it seems like a lot of philosophers think that these can be overcome. You can try to make sense of them being names or standing for something, a relation, or an idea. Stands for an idea. Because there are a lot of nouns that it is hard to say what they are using ostensive definition. Words like justice, time, length. Point to length, somebody. Anybody? Point to length. Not the length of something, like not the desk. Don't point to the desk. Just point to length. Can you do it? Not really. How about wisdom? Here's a good one for you. Pain. Seems like we can almost do that one, right? Point to your pain. Point to pain. Can you do that? In your knee? There it is. Well, where exactly in your knee is the pain? Or how about this one? The number 2. Mind, soul, consciousness. Well, the way out of this is, these are names, yes, but not of things you can point to. They're names of what? Ideas. So point to them, anybody. If you were to point to an idea, where would you point? I saw that. She brought up a big sign of the word pain and then pointed to it. Very clever. Ideas, does this fix it? Point to your idea, Laurel. You got one right now? Have an idea and then point to it. Here, ideas are in your head. So if we took some kind of a scope that scanned your head, could we find them? No? You're good at hiding them? What? Why not? Why couldn't we find them? All right, so we still have this kind of a problem. The third thing I want to say about ostensive definitions is definitions don't actually always give you, in fact, rarely do they give you the meaning of a word. Think of this word. So if we're supposing that the meaning of the word is the object which it names, then the meaning of this word would be, well, I don't have it here, but I could maybe make a fire, and then you'd say, there, that's the meaning of that word. All right, really? When you use the word fire, do you use it just to refer to that thing? What if you did this? You built a fire, and I say, what's the meaning of fire? And you just point it. Would that be the way you ordinarily use the word fire? Think of the ways you might use the word fire. Anybody? What are ordinary ways in which you might use the word fire? Maybe you would say you're fired. So the alarm goes off and I say, fire! Am I using that to refer to the object out there, wherever it is? Hopefully it's out there, not in here. What do I mean?
Run.
Run! If I meant run, why didn't I say run? Well, how many of you would misunderstand me? The alarm goes off. You see this look of surprise on my face, and I go, fire! Well, who would be in doubt about what I meant? Anybody? I don't think so. Would you? Here's another case. A squad. We got our guns. There's this poor sap that's been caught. Fire! Means what?
Shoot.
Shoot. So do we use the word just as a referent? Is that what we usually use the word to mean? I say, fire! And you turn to me and you say, you mean that? And I'd say, no, you idiot, get out of here. Right? So this is another problem with supposing that the meaning of a word is the thing which it names. So we have all these problems with it. In most cases where an ostensive definition is given, what you're really doing with that is preparing someone to use the word for other purposes. Right? It's preparatory. Think about this. How often have your parents named you? What's your name?
William.
William. How often have your parents named you? When you were born, or possibly before. They named you. Now, do they use your name? Do they use it to name you? Well, means what? Come home, dinner's ready. Oh, scolding, right? Oh, William. Right? So, naming you is preparatory to using your name for all kinds of other reasons, other purposes, right? Does that make sense? And you might see that this is really the way it is with ostensive definition. You know, you often do this with children, they're just learning to speak. You'll name things and point at them. Does that mean they know the meaning of that word? Or is it just a way to prepare them to use that word in all kinds of other ways? I would submit that that's really the right picture. That's the right answer. That's how things go. All right, now the other kind of definition, which is a dictionary definition. You define a word by looking it up. And what do you find in the dictionary? Well, just other words. How about that? Is that a problem? In one sense, this kind of gets us no further, because in order to know what this word means, I got to look up these other words, and that means I got to know what all of those words mean. And now, do I have to look every one of those up too? It almost begins to look like, in order to avoid an infinite regress of words, you know, just looking one up and then another one up and then another one up. By the way, this is one of the things the philosopher Descartes said. He refused the definition of man as a rational animal because he thought he'd have to define those terms, and that wouldn't just bring him to more terms he couldn't define, and so on. So instead, he said man is a thinking thing, as if that's better. How did you know that without using words? Anyway, so it kind of leads us to this question. So are there kind of like first words that you don't have to look up and you just know? You just know the meaning?
Eureka.
Eureka! Oh, wait, no, not that word. You mean, I found, what would they be, by the way? What do you think? Mama? Dada? How about just the noise? Like kids often do. Is that a word? When does it become a word? Try this. It's sort of a mean trick. So don't try it, but imagine it. A little baby hasn't learned to talk yet, just points at something and goes, and you say, this. And you don't give it to him. You just say, oh, you mean this? Even a noise like means what? I want it. Give it to me. Right? All right. Well, this kind of leads to the notion that maybe ostensive definition is the way we first learned the first words, and then we're back to all the problems with ostensive definitions. Now, the point of all this is to get you to see that the word object view of what meaning is has a lot of problems, yet it is very seductive. For one, it's very simple, right? It's a very simple answer. The meaning of a word is the object which it names. Easy. Just memorize that, and now you can know what meaning is. And whenever anybody asks you the question, well, what does that mean? You just point to the thing that it names, and we're done. Right? It seems very simple. It's also, as I said, often in the case of many words, it's preparatory to using the words in other ways. So that's what also appeals to us. And here's something else. It also seems to offer an explanation of how not just words become meaningful, but how we understand sentences. So here's how this story goes. A sentence is a composite of words, right? Made up of words, arranged in a certain order. So if you know what each word means, then you will know what the sentence means. The words are the ingredients that make up that sentence, just like the things that the individual words name or stand for are the components that make up the fact, the state of affairs that the sentence stands for. That is, the sentence is a proposition. It corresponds to either an actual fact or a possible fact. The actual fact is true, the possible fact is false, but both are meaningful because it's just a set of names arranged in a certain order, and now you know how what sentences mean. Sounds good, doesn't it? Seems like a quite simple, easy way to understand what people are saying. You could use an analogy from physics. So the words are like the protons, the neutrons, and the electrons that make up an atom. The atom itself is the sentence. We even have a philosopher who once said these are atomic facts. Okay, it states something to be the case. The complex sentences would be like molecules. Paragraphs, which are made up of many sentences, would be like compounds, and etc. Right? Maybe a whole book is like an object, a table, a desk, a chair. This is an attractive view. In other words, it appeals to us. All right. Easy peasy, right? Every word is sign, every sentence is an arrangement of signs. The meaning of the word is the thing which the word signifies. The meaning of the sentence is the fact that it pictures. It's meaningful if it pictures a possible or an actual fact. And if it's true, if the fact it pictures is actual, then it's true. If the fact it pictures is not actual and just possible, then it's false. And now we can do philosophy. Now, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. This view of meaning can only be maintained if we can somehow explain what objects or things, whatever words you want to use here, what these words stand for, the things I mentioned, like these: the soul, the mind, consciousness. And so the usual tack, as I mentioned, was to say that they are either ideas, or here's another one, they are objects, they're just immaterial. Right? They're objects, but they're immaterial. They're metaphysical entities, we might say. And only in this way can we, it seems, can we save the words from becoming meaningless. It now appears that if this is what meaning is, then the only way these words can make sense and be meaningful is if they refer to, stand for some object, and now metaphysical possibly. If you don't think there are metaphysical objects, then you would just say these words are what? Meaningless. They're meaningless. And what should you do if you're talking gibberish? Quit. Good advice. Don't see things that are meaningless. Good advice. Right? So what we now have, based on this idea that the meaning of a word is the object which is named, the sentence is a picture of a fact, either actual or possible. We now have, in present day philosophy of mind, a series of theories that correspond with your answer to the question, what are these things, if they're anything at all? First one, known as dualism. There's a body you can point to, and then there's a soul that you can't, but it's still there, wherever there is. It still exists. Somewhere, somehow, in some manner, right? So, Jonathan, do you have consciousness?
I'd say so.
You're not sure? How about you? Are you sure he's conscious?
Am I sure he is?
Yeah.
Not anymore.
He's not sure either. You have consciousness, don't you? Oh, yeah. You're conscious, aren't you? But you got consciousness?
Let's say define.
Well, I asked you a question. If you didn't know what I meant, you should have said, what do you mean?
Based on the common definition. I said yes.
Yes, common definition, whatever that is. You got consciousness? Right, where is it? Right now.
So we're inside bodily function.
Here, in your foot. Yeah, all over, spread out.
Probably related to the brain.
Related to the brain. It's in your brain. Consciousness is in your brain. Yes? So you should be able to see it if you looked at your brain.
Depends on what we understand the brain.
It's somewhere in there. Haven't quite figured out where. Just like that. If we haven't found it yet, then how can you say you have it?
Point to its absence and it's.
Point to its absence? We know when you don't have it. Whack. There, see, it's gone. Where did it go? Okay, to some philosophers, this is a real problem. It's not something you laugh at, it's a real problem. Right?
Supposed to stop talking about meaningless.
Okay, there you go. Well, that's now our second possibility. So just let me put this down. So there's both. There's souls, minds, whichever word you want to use here. And then there's the body. You can point to the body, you can point to the brain. We know where they are. Soul and mind, not so sure. But must be there somehow. Why? Because we have the words. And if the meaning of the word is the object which it names, then it must name something. Right? Now, another possibility, of course, is what you just mentioned. Materialism. Materialism says, there is no such thing. There's no soul, there's no mind. Whatever we use those words for, it's not for some immaterial object. It's not for something you can't see or anything like that. Now, under materialism, there's two possible ways you can go. You can simply reduce to brain or nervous system. In other words, you just simply substitute, anytime you use the word mind, you just plug in the word brain or brain process or something like that, and that's the truth. Because there's something you can point to and find out and measure and look at. So that's what you really mean. Others, kind of the hardliners, would say, actually, we should just get rid of those words and not use them at all. They don't name anything, so they're meaningless. So we should just not use them. Others are willing to say, well, you know, that may take some time, so we'll still just use them, but we'll understand that what we really need is the brain or some brain process. Okay. The one kind, the hardliners, is called eliminative materialism. The other kind is generally it's called epiphenomenalism. You agree that there's some kind of experience we have which isn't completely reducible to talk about the brain, but that's what it really is. Okay. Then you've got a third possibility. This one is known as functionalism. And this one is attracted to a lot of people. The analogy goes like this. The mind is to the brain what software is to hardware. Okay, you know how computers work? You got a program, that's its software. It's not like an actual material thing, but it has to be kind of housed in a material thing. A flash drive or a hard drive or something like that. Right? So it kind of has a place where you can find it and a place where it works. It's a process. So according to this view, what you mean by mind is just the software, the program. And what you mean by brain is the thing which houses it. Make some sense? This is an appealing picture. It's actually a quite popular view in modern theories of the mind. A lot of people ascribe to it. I think this is the answer. What you mean by mind is this kind of program that your brain works according to. Right? It kind of fits with a lot of the ways we talk about things too. Have you been programmed? Well, in a sense. What's the program that's in you? Oh, we call it my mind. Any problems with that? Well, the analogy does break down. How does it break down? I mean, it makes sense if this computer is a program, it makes sense to ask the question, well, who programmed it? How did it get there? Who wrote the program? Right? And what answer could you give to that? That's one answer. God. Are you comfortable with the idea that God programmed you? Sound quite right or not? Another possible answer is what? Your parents? DNA is kind of like a program, isn't it? You inherit that from your parents, and so how about this? There's a program, but it's the product of evolution. So evolution programmed you. Does that make sense? Yes or no? No. Does it at least sound strange to you to say that? I hope it does. Evolution is not a person. Programmer usually is. In fact, always is. Right? Okay, so this is where we're at. These are the three primary predominant views in modern philosophy of mind, and almost, I would say, probably 90% of the people in philosophy who call themselves philosophers of mind ascribe to one or another of these theories. Here's the crucial thing. Every one of these theories arises out of this view of language that the meaning of a word is the object which it names, the meaning of a sentence is the fact that it pictures, that it stands for. How about we try something different? Let's do something which I think makes much more sense. And now here I'm just going to throw out a few things that I think are not questionable, although you might want to question me. These are, I throw them out in the way of reminding you of something which really you already know. First of all, words, sentences, paragraphs, and so on. Words do not mean. We do. Words don't mean things. We mean things. A sentence doesn't mean something. I mean something when I say a sentence, when I use it. Now, if you doubt that, just think about this. If you don't know what someone means, do you ask the words they used what they mean? Or do you ask the person, what do you mean? Right? Any disagreements? I mean something. I use my words to mean something. So my words are my tools to mean something. But the words all by themselves don't mean. Example, you ever looked at a word on a page and just stared at it for a while? Or said it over and over to yourself in your mind, that word, and had this kind of uncanny feeling that I don't know what that word means. Ever done that? Usually happens when you're really tired. Right? Syzygy.
Moist.
I mean, no, I'm actually thinking of words that you've used your whole life. Right? Why is that? What's going on? What are you not remembering? Its use, which is right there. If you read it in a sentence, you'll see how it's being used. That's what you're not remembering. Okay? Second thing I want to remind you of is we never speak or write in a vacuum. There is always a context, a setting, a situation. Who is speaking? To whom? For what purpose? In what circumstances? And so on. Look, here's something else we all know. Every word you use has more than one meaning, right? What I mean by that is it can be used in more than one way. What does that word mean? What are all the ways you can use it? Right? We done? Shot. How about this? Right? Great shot. What's another one? What's another one? Oh, I just got a shot. That one. Thank you. I knew somebody. That's good. Right? Shot. It was a shot. What's another one? I remembered this clearly because when my son was small, I was watching a football game and there was this just massive tackle. And I went, oh, what a shot. And he said, Dad, did he shoot him? There you go. Camera shot. Yeah, take the shot, right? Here's another thing about the word shot. It can also be a verb. Right? Would it make sense to you saying, he shot the shot? Shot the shot. how do you know in any case which meaning that word has? What do you have to know? Context. Who's saying it, in what situation, to whom, for what purpose? Right? Make a pun here. What's the aim? What's the purpose of using the word shot?
Depends on what you're shooting for.
It is. It does. It does. So the basketball coach yells to his player on the court, take the shot, take the shot. This means what?
Oh, shoot.
And then you might say that, right?
I always did.
Shoot, shoot. Ah, shoot. You can even imagine that. It's easy, right? The same guy says, shoot. And then he misses it and he goes, ah, shoot. Wow, if you don't know context, you're going to be totally confused by that, aren't you? So this is something we all know. Let's think of some other words like this. I mentioned the word fire. How many ways are there to use the word fire? All right, we know one. Fire! Which means run, get out, go. Here's another one. Oh, ah, fire. Right? What's another one?
Fired up.
Let's get some fire. Right?
That's fire.
What?
That's fire.
Not familiar with that one.
Like,
What do you
that's
think?
fire, that's cool. That's
Oh, yes. Now I got you. It's what kids do, right? Fire! Ah! Right? Think of the arsonist. Fire! Right? All these different ways of using it. And of course, then there's the verb, right? It's a verb too. Fire. How about this one? Water. Water. Just the word water. How many ways are there to use that single word? All by itself. You just run the race, right? You're parched. Water. What's another one? Yeah. Water. If you're a woman of few words, you might tell your son, water. Right? What's another? Maybe the flood's coming. Water. Or you're in Nebraska in 2022 and you haven't had rain for weeks and months, and you say, it rains, and you go, oh, water. Right? Now you can do the same thing with sentences. Think about this sentence, okay? This actually happened. True story. My wife went to the grocery store. She comes home and she says to me, the groceries are in the trunk. What does she mean? What if I did this? I went out, looked, and said, yep. I agree. Come on, you know what she means? I know what she means. What does she mean? Bring them in, right? Go get them. Bring them in. How about this? Okay, this seems like the quintessential example of the statement of fact. The sky is blue. Who could say that? For what reason? Can you think of a scenario in which it would make sense to just say, the sky is blue?
Essentially, state of fact.
And give me a circumstance where I would just say,
Your friends.
the sky is blue.
The weatherman.
Weather. Sky is blue. Okay. Maybe that works.
I don't think I've heard of it. I mean, usually what they'll say is, it's clear and sunny. This guy's, I can think of a situation. We live in Seattle, it's cloudy 300 days a year. But you love the sky. You love the sky, and your friend loves the sky. And it's been months since you could skydive. And one day you wake up, look out the window, no clouds. You call up your friend and say, the sky is blue. Means, let's go. Here's one, it's raining. You say that to someone for what purpose? Think of some situations in which it would make sense to say, it's raining. Actually, we just had one with the water example, right? It's a drought. Look out. It's raining. Means something like hallelujah. Is that a statement of fact? Hallelujah. Is it? I can also imagine this. If the guy looks at, it's raining. Hallelujah. What do you mean, hallelujah? What does that word stand for? Does it stand for something? Or is it meaningless? All right, getting the hang of this a little bit. So the meaning of a word is not the thing which it names, and the sentence is not meaningful just because it states a fact. Its meaning is not found in what it names or what it pictures. Its meaning is found in its uses. Which is why, of course, words, the same word can have multiple meanings because there's all kinds of different ways to use that word, right? So now we can go to these words. And this is where I really need your cooperation or your input, okay? We are going to think of ways to use these words. Consciousness, soul, mind. And rather than trying to figure out the meanings of these words by looking for the things with which these words name, we're going to look at their uses. So let's come up with some. I had other examples, but I'm going to have to skip them because. All right, I got an example for you that I want to see how many people, what your reaction is to this. So this is the film clip. You know what I need to do, Cornelius? Yeah, it is.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Oh, brother, where art thou? Who's seen it? Okay. Can you hear it? No words yet. But. Just a minute. Can I get that louder?
There's a file over here.
Okay, see if you can get it louder.
Try that. People going past Tishmango. Sure, I'm in.
Damn, son, name's Everett. These two soggy sons of bitches are Pete and Delmer. Keep your fingers wet in Pete's mouth. He ain't had nothing to eat for 13 years except prison food, gopher, and a little greasy horse.
Thanks for the list, sir. My name's Tom Johnson.
How you doing, Tommy? Say, I haven't seen the house out here for miles. What are you doing out in the middle of nowhere?
I had to get that crossbow man at midnight. Selling soul to the devil.
Well, be it a small world, spiritually speaking. Keaton Delmer just been baptized and saved. I guess I'm the only one that remains unaffiliated. What did that give you for yourself, Tommy?
But it told me to play this guitar real good.
Oh, son, for man, you traded your everlasting soul.
Well, I wouldn't use it.
That's all I wanted to show. So what does he say? He was there at the crossroads to sell its soul to the devil, right? So there's you got a use, right? You've heard this use before, haven't you? There's an expression, sold my soul to the devil, or so and so did. And for what? Why did he sell his soul to the devil? Well, so he could play this here guitar real good. Then what's that? The next line? Oh, son, for that you traded your everlasting soul? Well, I wasn't using it. Huh, what's going on here? All right, to say I wasn't using it. Why is that funny, by the way? Yeah. I think it's funny. I think it's hilarious. I wasn't using it. Why is that funny?
It's not having a picture of soul, like having function, use it, have it.
Right, you know something about this word already. You know that that's not how you use the word. It makes no sense to use it in that way. The word, I mean. Hope we don't get confused between using the word and using your soul. Do you use your soul for something? Is it like your car? You use your car to drive? What do you use your soul for? Use it for life? Does that work? Well, if he wasn't using it, that would mean he's dead. Is he dead? Here's something I find quite ironic about this movie. So he sells his soul to the devil so he can play that guitar real good. Now, in the following scene, you see him playing his guitar, and he plays it real good. You might even say he puts his soul into it. Right? Don't we have that expression? She poured her heart and soul into that. He puts his soul into his music. We do have soul music, don't we? Okay, think of some other expressions with me. What does it mean to sell your soul? Well, as far as I can recall, there's various things you can sell your soul to. You can sell your soul to the devil. You can also sell your soul to the company store. Anybody remember that old song? Can you sell your soul to the corporation? They don't use it either. They don't use it either. Yeah. They have no use for it. There's something else you could sell your soul to? Well, what does it mean? I sold my soul to the devil. Maybe we should start this way. What doesn't it mean? What can't it mean?
You made a transaction with legal tender.
Right? Here, what do you give the devil when you sell your soul to him? Come on, what does it mean?
The person saying,
Oh, what do you understand it to mean? If I say of somebody else, she sold her soul to the devil. What? Herself? Okay. Means what? You can't trust her anymore. She's corrupt. Right? Isn't that what it means? I say of you sold your soul to the devil,
I'm telling everybody else what? Don't trust him. Don't believe him. I'm not, okay, I'm just using you as an example. I don't even know who you are, so. I hope you haven't sold your soul to the devil. I mean, you got a cross on your shirt, so let's hope that doesn't guarantee anything. Right, we all understand, sold your soul in the company store means what? You'll do whatever they ask you to do, even if it's corrupt, right? So we got that use. Is it necessary for you to understand that sentence without having a picture in your mind or some kind of a thing that you can connect the word to and say that's what it stands for? Can you understand the sentence even without that? Can you use it correctly? Can you understand what someone else means when they say it? Right? You following? And now, okay, he says, I use the other example. So put your heart or soul into it. We might say to somebody, or we might say of somebody. They really put their soul into their music, into their playing. What does that mean? Or maybe we could do this again. What doesn't it mean? What can't it mean? How do you, after all, put your soul into your music? What does it mean? If I say that about this guy here, I don't know if you're a musician, but if I say, man, he puts his soul into his music, or whatever it is, right? You put your soul into your craft. He puts his soul into his carpentry. Is that possible, by the way?
Don't just do it for money or fame or not just reading the notes.
Right. We love it for its own sake. Right? Now, again, is it necessary to understand that sentence that you have in your mind or be able to say, here's what the word soul is connected up with? Okay, give me some other expressions. There's many, many, many expressions.
Food for the soul.
Okay, I like that. That would be chicken soup, right? What's food for the soul? I mean, what do we normally mean? If you say, oh, man, that was food for my soul. What are you talking about?
Different context for it. It could be like actual food, like home cooking.
Soul food?
Yeah, soul food. Or it could be more in a spiritual sense. So like reading
Oh.
literature.
Right.
Or doing something someone really enjoys.
You say, oh, man, that is food for the soul. Means what?
Nourishes.
I love it because it's good. Love it's right. That's has a good effect upon me. It makes me a better person. How about that? Again, you have kind of the moral connotation. It makes me a better person. It improves my virtue, improves my goodness, improves my outlook on life. It's good for the soul. There's another one, rest. Do you have rest? Is there such thing as rest for the soul? Jesus talks about it, right? Come unto me, all you who are weary, heavy laden, I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and you will find rest for your souls. What does he mean? What do you do to rest your soul? Prayer. Meditation. rest for your soul, you find some kind of peace. Something that puts you at peace. Right? So is it food? And by the way, do you need, again, I'll ask the same question, do you need to have some kind of idea of what the soul is in order to use that expression and mean something by it? Do you? I think so. Other expressions using the word soul?
I've got a whole page full, but I don't want to just use mine. I want you to think of some. I mean, scripture is a good source for a lot of quotations about the soul, isn't it?
A lost soul.
Yeah, a lost soul. What if you say of somebody, oh, he's a lost soul? What do you mean by that?
Hopeless.
Okay, yeah, here's something I think, another subtle point. You could like rephrase it, but sometimes even the rephrasing is not what you mean. What you mean is, what are you doing with the sentence? What are you doing with it? So if I say, oh, there goes a lost soul, what am I doing with that sentence?
Feeling.
Expressing my pity, my sympathy, maybe even my sorrow. Ah, there goes a lost soul. Right? So it's not just a matter of rephrasing the sentence into other words. It's, what are you doing with the sentence? Others? Other expressions? Psalm 23, he revives my soul. So he is God, revives my soul. What does that mean? He revives my soul. I think here it's, you got to remember something. This is a psalm. What is this psalmist doing? Singing, giving praise. He revives my soul. I'm giving praise. Now, if somebody comes along and says, look, what do you mean by that? Because you don't have a clear picture of what the soul is, or even how it can be revived. What do? Give it water? What? That's how I revive my plant that's dying. I give it water and sunlight. Is that it? What do you mean? Now, I think what the right response to that is, you don't understand what I'm doing with this. I'm not making claims. I'm not giving you information. I'm praising God. Right? So to take it any other way, out of context, as it were, is not to understand it. You don't know what it means. Make some sense to everybody, how we're doing this? Any other expressions you want to work on with soul?
Well, we got this one. What does it profit a man if he gain the whole world and loses his soul? What's the point of that sentence? Now, here's, you got to pay attention to all these things. Who says it? Christ says it. To whom? You remember the setting, situation? Rich man, right? What must I do to be saved? Obey the law of God. Jesus says, okay, well, then you also have to like give up everything you have. Give away all your riches to help the poor, whatever. Give it to those who need it. And, yeah, okay. No, I don't think so. And then he tells his disciples. What does it profit?
Easier.
Right? What does it profit? Is that the right story? Is it the same story? I know he first says it's easier for camels to pass.
I'm not sure. If it's the same.
I think it is. I think it is. Other expressions? Anybody else?
Bless their soul.
Bless their soul, right? Oh, yeah. I like that one. Isn't that good? The old grandma, oh, bless your soul, right? Bless your soul. What's the response to that? How do you express, how do you show that you understood her? Bless your soul. Would you do this? Okay, how? Okay, how? Oh, bless your soul.
Don't have to do that, Grandma. I sold it.
That's right. Can't, Grandma, can't do it anymore. I lost it. Now look, you can do the same thing with the word mind. Anybody in here ever lost their mind? You lost your mind? Where did you lose it? Is losing your mind like losing your keys? And if they have to go look for it, where would you look? I know, in the gutter. Your mind's in the gutter. What does that mean? Your mind's in the gutter. Get your mind out of the gutter. Right? Let's start thinking of some expressions using the word mind.
Out of your mind.
You're out of your mind.
Quiet mind.
What?
Quiet mind.
Okay, you can have a quiet mind. Quiet your mind. Let's start with this one. You're out of your mind. What do you mean when you tell somebody that? You're out of your mind. How actually do you get out of your mind? But you're out of your mind means something like, look, you're crazy. Actually, what it really means, what's the point is, don't do that. Right? That's what it sometimes means. It could also mean this. Don't listen to him. He's out of his mind. Right? Any other expressions of the mind?
You're blowing my mind.
Oh, there's a good one. Blew my mind. We even do that gesture, right? As if that blew my mind. What is this gesture for? What is that for? You know what it means, don't you? What does it mean? What's the point of saying that? Actually, there could be several points of saying, several reasons you might say that. Situations, put it that way, several contexts. What might it mean?
Could be that you taught that someone learned something that they never knew before. They learned something that changes their perspective on the situation.
Right. And they go, wow. It means the same thing as, wow. Is that a statement of fact? Is that an assertion? Is that a proposition? Is that information? Wow. I could also do it sarcastically. Wow, that blew my mind. That is mind-blowing. Other expressions? Mind? Okay, you can be mindful. What does that mean? I'm mindful. Well, who isn't? Descartes, here's kind of a related one. Descartes says, to exist, you must think. It's the same thing. I exist, therefore I am. So in class, I often tell students, you guys remember, right? That's what I like about you. You're always thinking. Oh, wait. Everybody is. According to Descartes, you're always thinking. You wouldn't exist if you weren't, so therefore, isn't that what? Does that expression now have any use? That, John, he's always thinking. Don't take it as a compliment because everyone is. Talk about stating the obvious, right? Mind, any other expressions using the mind?
Mind over matter.
Mind over matter. What does that mean? Is mind over matter?
A dirty
How about that one? I knew I could count on you, Tom. Yeah, he's got a dirty mind. What does that mean? What does that mean? He's got a dirty mind. Here's some metaphysical soap and water. Clean it. Now, what does it mean? He's got a dirty mind. It's vulgar. Come on, beyond the rephrasing of it, what else? What do you say it for? What is its purpose?
Doesn't care about you.
Okay. It could be an expression of disgust. A dirty mind. Or it might mean stay away from him, especially if you're a girl. Stay away from him.
Complimenting a sense of humor.
What's that?
Could be complimenting a sense of humor.
Yeah, I suppose you could use it for that. You could, yeah, that's possible. Oh, he's got a dirty mind. That's what I like about him. Other expressions? Mind?
Business,
What's that?
mind your business.
Mind your own business. And look, that one's interesting because now it's not the noun, it's the verb form, which is perfectly appropriate, right? We bring the verb form in. Mind your own business. How do you do that? What does that mean? Why would you say that to someone? To whom would you say it? For what purpose? In what circumstances? Right, basically means leave me alone. Right? Go away. Mind your own business. I had you in mind when I said that. There's an expression. In mind. I had you in mind. How do you do that? By the way, is it this way? You're in my mind or you're on my mind? Which one is those?
You're in my mind because I've got a lot on my.
Is it better to have a lot on your mind or a lot in your mind? And now how about consciousness? This is maybe one of my favorite ones. I have 4 books on my shelf in my office that were sent to me as possible textbooks to use in a philosophy of mind class. And every one of them is about the question, what is consciousness? It's the last nut to crack in psychology. The last thing, if we can solve this question. All right, so let's think about the word consciousness. When do you use that word? Give me some expressions.
Self-conscious.
You could be self-conscious. So if consciousness is a thing, what would What's self-consciousness? Who is self-conscious? Unless, of course, you can have someone else's consciousness. Yeah, can you be conscious of other people? Let's, for the time being, work on just the word consciousness. So here's one. He lost consciousness. Right? You might say it about yourself. I lost consciousness then. Now, by the way, you wouldn't say that when you're unconscious. I don't think you say anything when you're unconscious. Maybe you could dream or sleepwalk. By the way, are you unconscious when you sleep? Is that right? You're certainly not conscious. Semi-conscious? 10% conscious. But generally, right, he lost consciousness means what? He's out, right? He fainted or he got hit or he's in a coma. He lost consciousness. He saw blood and that was it. Lost consciousness. Right?
Did you find it?
Where would you look to find it? Because we also say oh, he regained consciousness. So he lost it and then he regained it. How did he do that? How did he do
Especially since he was unconscious.
Yeah. How do you look for your consciousness when you're unconscious? It's just serendipity. Just came back of all of its own self. It's consciousness. Come on, what does it mean? Why would somebody say, oh, he lost consciousness? It might mean something like, quit asking him questions. Right? He can't answer you. Stop asking questions. Or it might mean, say you're in a hospital, you lost consciousness. Means what? Call the doctor. Bring him in the room. We got to do something for him. Right? He lost consciousness. And now, oh, he regained consciousness. Well, this might mean now you can talk to him. Go ahead. Or it might just mean something like, you can relax. He's going to be all right. Again, same kind of problem. Do we have to have some idea of what the word stands for in order to meaningfully use these words or even these sentences? So I would submit to you this, okay? Maybe I beat this dead horse, okay? But we know what these words mean. What leads us into thinking we don't? Well, as Wittgenstein says, we're bewitched by our own language. We start to say, okay, the meaning of the word has got to be the object which it names, because sometimes that's how we start learning language. We do this ostensive definition. We point to things, use the word, and so we're easily led into this false picture of what meaning is. Now, what does this have to do with what the panel said before? Maybe here's where you can make these connections. Who was here before with the panel? And there were 4 people talking, trying to answer these questions. A few of you, at least. Okay. Would you say that this confusion was at work in some of those answers that you got from the panelists? Were they? Did you see any evidences that they were actually approaching the problem in this way? With the underlying idea that the meaning of the word is the thing that it names.
who was there, if you were there. Is this evident to you that this confusion was at work in the answers that you heard?
I'd say so in a few cases.
I remember we had some who were dualists. A couple, I think. We had some that couldn't quite commit to dualism, but they thought maybe some kind of a reduction could be made. You could talk about the soul in terms of the brain or some process of the brain. You don't have to go there. You don't have to. I want to say one other word. Often, this will lead you into having certain pictures. It's true. When people think of the soul, especially when there's talk about how the soul survives death or something like that, it's quite common for us to imagine, to come up with certain kinds of pictures of what that might be like. Maybe we could try that. There's probably a number of you in here who would say, yeah, I think there's a soul, and I think you can make sense of saying that the soul is eternal or it's immortal. How do you picture that? If I ask you to imagine what that is, what that would be like, go ahead. I mean, don't be afraid to share. I'll start. So I actually enjoy flying on airplanes. One thing I love about it is I've always wondered what it would be like to live in the clouds. And sometimes I get this idea. I even sort of daydream about it. What if after I die, I can live in the clouds? And I look at the clouds and I think, so like maybe I could stand on that cloud and look down on the fields and valleys and mountains below without the sound of jet engines. It's a very appealing picture. Well, go ahead and ask me. Do you have any idea how that could actually happen? My answer would be, no, I don't. I have no idea, A, how it could happen, or B, if that's really what it would be like after death. Well, is it a problem to imagine it? Or can what I imagine serve the same purpose as just saying the soul is eternal? In other words, the aim of what I say might be the same as the picture that I formed. Really, the picture that I formed, the effect it has on me is one of excitement, of longing. It puts a smile on my face. I might even say to myself, how nice that would be. Isn't that the point of the picture? And now, isn't that the same role that saying the soul is eternal might have? Same effect? In other words, I could hear someone say to me, the soul is eternal. Don't you know? You know, someone's died and you say, what, they've gone to a better place. Do you have any idea what that place is really like? No. Does that matter? No. What's the effect of saying that? It's comforting. It soothes me. It gives me rest for my soul. And I no longer am tempted to think that death is such a horrible thing. Now, the picture I have of me on the clouds has the same effect. It does the same work. It frees me from worries. It helps me to face my own life by thinking, you know what? All the stuff that happens to me is not that important. So my point about bringing this up is to say, there's nothing wrong with forming these pictures. And I wanted to ask you, of course, nobody volunteered what you thought, but what picture you have that's associated with those words. I think what we find is a great variety of pictures, right? I mean, how many of you have the same one I do about living in the clouds? Probably not, right? So when you hear those words, you know, the soul will survive death, what picture comes to your mind? Anyone want to share?
Being with God.
Okay, what is
being
that?
With people that have gone before me.
Okay, so
Connecting with them again.
you're thinking of the great cloud of witnesses, the hosts of heaven, maybe even particular friends or relatives that have gone before. And you think to yourself, I will see them again. How accurate does this picture have to be? You have to be able to like name them, see their faces. Do you have any idea if they'll look the same or different?
Okay.
Don't care. Good answer. Does it matter? Well, in Revelation, right, the book of Revelations, you have a picture of the heavenly city, and it's got gates of pearl, streets of gold. I'll be honest with you, I'm not really too keen about that. That doesn't really do it for me. I could care less about a street of gold or a gate of pearl. In fact, I'd rather live in the country than the city. Does that matter? What is the effect of the vision? Well, it's really quite similar to the effect that I have, that I get when I think about living in the clouds or up on a mountain somewhere with blue skies and falling streams and waterfalls and stuff like that. All right, maybe I've talked way too much. And I was really hoping more from you, but I got good responses. Thank you for joining in. I appreciate that. Now, just open it up. Questions? Maybe some expressions we didn't look at that you want to look more at. This is really just the beginning. I mean, like, it was hard. I was thinking about talking tonight and thinking, okay, I'm going to have to try to cram into an hour or more what usually takes several semesters of doing in class. So if you're confused and bored or tired, I understand. Any questions? Anything you want to? Wow. Go ahead.
Like, to me, I always sort of wonder, like, what is the importance of going over these things? Like, it always seems like you can't be just beating the dead horse, because in the end, a lot of these issues are, I think, they don't really have a whole point. And you can function totally well in the world without thinking, like, why is the word not matched with the object? Not going over this.
Well, it's an excellent question. I think the point of telling you this is so you don't do that. Don't waste your time with this, because it all arises from a confused view about what counts as meaning. But you know, you have to be aware that there are many, many people just absorbed in this search, right? Best thing I could say is, if you see that it's a waste of time, then you won't waste your time. Right? So why do I do that? Well, that's why. Right?
Which time?
How can you waste time? That's a good question. Waste the time. How can you waste time?
Well, it seems like what you're saying is those who are tempted or even succumb to these temptations or get into these confusions don't know that they're in them. So getting out is going to be harder than, say, if you're playing the guitar and a string breaks, you know something's gone wrong, so you can fix it.
Right.
But these are kinds of confusions that every now and then you might need a certain reminder for clarity of thought.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah, so my colleagues know, and some of you may know too, that I'm not, what I told you tonight is not original with me. The philosopher who has been most helpful to me in showing these things is Wittgenstein. If you've read some of his works, you know that I'm just following his lead here. And he even uses that expression, right? What he's doing is, as he puts it, assembling reminders for a specific purpose. In another place, that purpose he describes, he uses an analogy showing the fly out, the way out of the fly bottle. Right? So getting rid of the confusions so that you no longer see it. Another way to put it is, he's not solving the problems, he's dissolving the problems. Showing you that what you thought was a problem, philosophers of mind, is not a problem. Okay. And he always comes back to a very sensible notion. What we mean is to be found in our ordinary use of language. I do want to say one other thing, since I got at least a couple of poets, 3, 4 poets here. One of the things that strikes me about poetry is poets always know this. They know that every word has multiple uses and they work on it. That's how you can have multiple meanings of one word in a poem. That's how you can take an image and use it in more than one way. It's how you can personify something which is abstract. You know what you're doing and you do it on purpose. But what's the point? To produce an effect in the reader or the listener. Right? What kind of an effect? You want to do something to their passions. So Wittgenstein, actually it was Wittgenstein's, one of his students, okay, Bausma, who Tom actually met, I met once. He gives this expression, I think it actually is Wittgenstein's expression, poetry is language on a holiday. I love that. Okay? These poets are taking the language, playing with it, using it for a particular purpose. Look, it'd be a huge mistake for you to read a poem like you would a textbook. Right? Let's say you got a poem about, oh, come on, give me an example of, about
ship.
a ship, about a ship, okay? Maybe it's a historical event that actually happened, right? So you write a poem about it. Would it be a mistake to read that poem as if it was giving you the history of this event? Right? Poet might say, I don't know, think of something for me here, Jason.
Shannon,
The
Jean.
wreck of the Joyceman would have footnotes for that purpose.
Yeah, yeah. So the poet says something like, help me with a metaphor. I'm drawing a blank. Really can't do this. Okay, well, this is not the best example, but do you know the song, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald? One of the lines is there. Every man knew that something, when the witch of November came blowing or stealing. The witch of November. So is there a witch of November? Comes upon ships on Lake Superior?
Which?
Which witch? But what effect does it have on you to call the northeast winds a witch? What effect does it have? So sorry about the bad example, but lyrics to songs are similar to lines in poems.
Dr. Rozema, I can thank you. This has been incredibly stimulating. Some of the things I find so inspirational is maybe you've even moved us beyond meaning. In my world, meaning comes from paradigms, point of view, and lenses. That's the way we deal with things in English. But I'm always more excited about what Heidegger called unconcealment. The thing that comes forth when it's not called. And to me, when you get into these various uses of how language is used, it reminds me that there is meaning that is waiting to unconceal itself. And when you go through these varieties, I think it's very useful. So very briefly, I think in that context, truth is a secret that gets repeated. And I also think that lies live and die, and only the truth is infinite. But I think what really stimulated me, and then I'll be quiet here in just a second, is that your whole context of what you're talking about reminds me that we co-create meaning. And so many of us here are sitting here thinking of Hegel's categories. And the category you brought up is, as he says so well, the I and also. There is the self and the infinite, and the infinite is all the things that are impermanent and don't last. As Nietzsche mentioned it, we have the will to power. How do we take that thing that's buried within us, which would be essence as much as soul, mind, or consciousness, and made an outward representation of it? And I think most notably, the ideas really come to mind for me of what the great, if we can go Hegelian, we can go Husserlian, of what Husserl had to say for us in about 1913 in his book Ideas. He said, what we get when we go into the world of interpretation, whether it's philosophy, literature, poetry, is this is his language, it comes through Weller's translation. We get we get well-ordered infinities of incomplete experiences. And Husserl's idea was that what this brings us to is the idea of the infinite, not what the infinite is, certainly not what the eternal is. That we can go on and on and on. What we transcend is our own perception.
Well, most of what you said strikes me as being very poetic. What I mean by that is, if I want to understand what you're telling me, I have to understand that you're using these terms like experience and infinity, not as names of things. Right? In fact, some of the effect on me of what you just said is to cause me to wonder. Not just what did you mean, but I wonder how many things there are that I don't know. That's a good effect. But I would say, look, here are some words you used. I just picked two. I don't know what those words mean. Do we not? Yeah, should we say, I don't know what infinity means. I can't find anything which is infinity. What's that?
You haven't experienced infinity.
Oh. I want to say yes to that, but I'm not quite sure what it would be. An experience.
Take that long.
What's that?
It didn't
Didn't
take.
take that
Thought it'd
long.
take
How long
longer,
does it
but-
take you to experience infinity? You see the trouble you get into if you try to take that model of meaning? Now, I am extremely amenable to saying that many philosophers are actually better understood as poets. That sometimes what they say is not meant to be sort of interpreted on the model of word object. It's to be valued because of what it does to us, of the kinds of passions it stirs in us, of the sorts of attitudes it forms in us. Great. I'll be honest with you, Heidegger does not do that for me, but I can see how Hegel might, and certainly Plato does. Maybe someday I can find out what reading Heidegger, the good of that might be, but right now I don't know. So I kind of think that what you just said to me, on the one hand, I want to say, I know what you mean, but not using this sense of meaning, the word object sense. If I try to do that and decipher what you just said, can't do it. I'm lost. But if I think about, okay, some of the things you said have an appeal, have an attraction to me. What does it do to me? Well, it causes that kind of wonder, maybe even a sense of longing. Nothing wrong with that. Hope I haven't destroyed what you just said. That
Just a bit about the idea of well-ordered infinities.
There you go.
Good experiences.
There you go.
We always have one short.
Yep.
Meaning,
Yeah.
always at the top of the.
Yeah. All right, great. Other questions or things you want to talk about? You've been very patient. I appreciate it very much. Yes.
Why do you think that we would rather use the definition, like the dictionary definition, than the definition of the object in regular life? Do you think we would drive ourselves crazy?
Well, actually, I think most dictionaries, the function it serves, like I'll ask you, when do you use a dictionary?
Actually, I'm an English major, so quite a
Well,
bit.
great. That's even better. When do you use it?
Whenever I don't understand a word in poetry or in my literature that I'm reading, so pretty much daily.
Here's a word I've never seen before, so you look at it. Or, it's two. Here's a word which I know, it seems to be used differently than I've ever seen. And so you look and say, okay. Now, when you look in the dictionary, you will never find one definition. There will be many. In fact, here's one of the big problems dictionary makers have. If you were to include every use, that dictionary. Anybody seen that film called The Professor and the Madman? It's the story of how the Oxford English Dictionary got started. And the way this guy works, he's in charge of doing it, is every book that gets sold in the bookshops of London, he puts a little card on the front, and he asks the person who bought that book, find this word in this text and tell me what it means there. And this is how it kind of compiles all the different uses. Okay, this is a 2-hour movie, which actually is supposed to cover, I think, if I recall, maybe 5 or 6 years of work. And he just gets through the A's. If you were to give a complete dictionary containing all the different uses of all the words, I don't know if we could even have enough, big enough. And you know this, right? There are some dictionaries are better. Why? Not because they have better definitions, because they have more. Correct? So when do you use a dictionary? Well, you're like me. I mean, I don't generally use a dictionary. I certainly didn't learn to speak by looking at the dictionary. I didn't do that. I use it when, like you said, here's a new word, not seen it before, or here's a word here's a use I'm not familiar with. So you look it up and you see the dictionary helps you understand what is that use, how is it being used. Another thing you'll often notice, the use that it has, the one you look up, is connected with other uses. It's not the same, but it's got a similar, right? So think about what you use a dictionary for. You don't use it to get the initial meaning of the word. You use it, well, unless it's a brand new word, then you might. But generally you use it because you already know a lot of the uses, and you certainly know the uses of the words that surround that word in the text that you're looking at. Right? You know this. You know how to do it. Here's a list of uses. There's one, this use that you don't know. You can spot which one it is. Right? How can you do that? Right? You're never confused, are you? You don't look and say, well, maybe it's this use, or maybe it's that one, or maybe you can tell. How do you tell? Go back to the text and look at the context, and you say, okay, that's the one. In other words, the meaning of a word never exists in a vacuum. Going back to that example, staring at the word. Wittgenstein gives the example. It's like you got a toolbox, it's full of tools. And now here's this tool you've never seen before. You don't know how to use it. You don't know what it's used for. You just stare at it and go, what is that? What is that? Can you answer that question? You don't know what it is until you see it used. Right? Oh, that's what you do. That makes sense?